fate is before you. Choose wisely.
That's on me, ayy. All chained up, he on lockdown. He find God now. On my way up. The highs with the lows. That's life these days. World chained up, he on lockdown. Phone call 3 ways. I just pray that he find God now. It's no replay. On my way up to the top now. That's on me, ayy. The highs with the lows. That's life these days. World chained up, he on lockdown. Phone call 3 ways. I just pray that he find God now. It's no replay. On my way up to the top now. That's on me, ayy. Any day could've been dead. High school price on my head. Paranoid lying in my bed. Pray to God they don't turn my shirt cherry. I was lost, didn't know me. Introduced myself to codeine. 6 months was a dope fiend. Philly didn't even know things. There was a low me. Swear to God it would've owed me. Everything you ever told me. Everything you ever showed me. I forgot it. Caused me drama. I used to stay on one. Now I change on them. The highs with the lows. That's life these days. Bro chained up, he on lockdown. Phone call 3 ways. I just pray that he find God now. It's no replay. On my way up to the top now. That's on me, ayy. Hit the highs with the lows. That's life these days. Bro chained up, he on lockdown. Phone call 3 ways. I just pray that he find God now. It's no replay. On my way up to the top now. That's on me, ayy. I just saw Jizzy got a plane. Guess that's what he meant when he said nothing was the same. Lately I've been grounded, energizing off the pain. Some things gon' change, I'm just soaking up the game. Through the mud, out the rain, like I remember all those same nights. Now I'm on top, no stage fright. Now I'm on go, no brake lights. Hit the pedal, hit the engine roar. No fear like a matador. Breaking trends and I'm making more. Going up, climbing ladders more. I can't be stopped. Now I do what I want. Real, no front. All the way to the top. Highs with the lows. That's life these days. World chained up, he on lockdown. Phone call 3 ways. I just pray that he find God now. It's no replay. On my way up to the top now. That's on me, ayy. Hit the highs with the lows. That's life these days. World chained up, he on lockdown. Phone call 3 ways. I just pray that he find God now. It's no replay. On my way up to the top now. That's on me, ayy. Keep God first. I see evil when I converse. Not today, say. This how God works. Play my position, what is given with no concerns. Go. Set it off. Top of the morning, I'm gonna set it off. You living boring, I'm gonna set it off. Shooting, I'm scoring, I'm gonna set it off. Like soldiers torn, I'm gonna set it off. Son of God, no, I am not son of man. Blessings keep falling, the fingers keep coming in. I got you, but just know I'm texting like Uncle Sam. Left to the bank, you know that I'm coming in. We don't do it for the bands though, we don't do it for the clout. Legacy on the line, so I'm moving in and out. Seen good ones turn top dog, greedy ones get knocked off. I keep looking at the bench like I could never not ball. Coach keep me in the game, Curry deadly with the range. I keep looking in the mirror like, who is he? I'm insane. Who am I? He insane. Guess I ain't the one to blame. What's done is done, won't change. Time to live up to my name. Real will be real, fake gon' fall. Took time with this here, I'm made for a while. No sleep in the while, I won't fall. No sleep in the while, I want it all. I keep God first. I see evil when I converse. Not today, say. This how God works. Play my position, what is given with no concerns. Go. Set it off. Top of the morning, I'm gonna set it off. You living boring, I'm gonna set it off. Shooting, I'm scoring, I'm gonna set it off. Like soldiers touring, I'm gonna set it down. Told my baby, meet me at the bank. Told my mama, I'ma break the trend. Locked in, I'ma change the weight. Working for my baby's kids. Hard times couldn't make the rent. Working hard, couldn't save a cent. Lonely nights, just me and God. Swear to him, always made the ends. Grab a paper, see the news. Hate coming by the tools. Walk a mile in my shoes. Something you can never do. Got my back against the wall. Bet I always pull through. Who are you, who are you? Who are you, who are you? Sending shots, I block 'em. Superman with the moves. Rock 'em, sock 'em, drop, pop 'em. Play to win, never lose. Run it up, I top 'em. Plate full, belly too. I hip hop or pop 'em. Anything I could do. The real won't be real, fake gon' fall. Took time with this here, I made for a while. No sleeping while I won't fall. No sleeping while I won't it all. I keep God first. I see evil, I evil when I converse. Not today, say. This how God works. Play my position, what is given with no concerns. Go, 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 go. Set it off. Top of the morning, I'm gonna set it off. You living boring, I'm gonna set it off. Shooting, I'm scoring, I'm gonna set it off. Like soldiers touring, I'm gonna set it off. I hit record a job, you can't ignore it. I'm transforming now these cars and planes, I'm always boarding. Just out touring down in Charlotte like I play for Hornets. When I'm performing, never boring, now you can't afford it. Champagne Perrier, finished friends on my face. Looking like I'm from the deep, these no Cartiers. Pockets deep, 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 bro. I can make it in my seat, bro. Do you, I'm doing me, bro. Making noise, use a beat, bro. Whoa, whoa. I press the button and the doors go off like whoa. That money clip us now, the new now looks like whoa. Upgrade her diamonds, now her girlfriends are like whoa, 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 whoa. Neighborhood on the scene, neighborhood on the strip. Neighborhood be the name, neighborhood no crib. Neighborhood that's me, neighborhood that's Nick. Neighborhood do the dance, neighborhood do the dip. Okay, thought I'd never make it like no way. I'm the real deal, no role play. My days off, that's no days. No, I hustle hard, yeah, I'm rose. E be the shooter, that's cold case. Those on the deals, that's brose. Got no pay, yo, no say. Okay, this the news, tell them read it. Been the one since the fetus. Don't sleep on me, Tempur-Pedic. That's a no, no, no. Spending dope for no reason. Got a ball head, Mr. Cleaner. Heard the big bags overseas, then we gon' go, go, go. Whoa, I press the button and the doors go off like whoa. That money clip us now, the new now looks like whoa. Upgrade her diamonds, now her girlfriends are like whoa, 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 whoa. I press the button and the doors go off like whoa. That money clip us now, the new now looks like whoa. Upgrade her diamonds, now her girlfriends are like whoa, 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 whoa. On my own, no fixer. I'm gon' ball, no picker. That I8 doors, they live for. Talking on my back, go figure. Whole team eats from Slater. Never was the one to go flicker. No face, no case, no picture. Full place, big stakes, my dinner. Flip that, Canal Street. Flip back. Last week, old money. This week, new racks. Never buy 9 more. If I can't afford to gift wrap, stunning in your foreign car. You keep riding rental tags. Heard you rollie as a lean, we are not the same. Couple thousand in my pocket, this pocket chick. Rubber bands on my arm, this is not for play. I put 20 on the crib while you cop a chain. I know they hate it or love it. You know I love when they hate it. Last year was living basic. Haters on the other side. 3 up, read between the lines. Know I got some angels with me. Made it through some evil times. Late night on some demon time. Pour the Sprite, I need love. I can't lie. You can assume with your chains on. I can see none with the lights off. Cap, you been the main one. Coolin' when I got my mains on. Show money.
Have you been a victim of modern dating and relationships? Has it put you in a predicament where you felt like the rubber band man? The Spinners created a song back in the 70s talking about the rubber band man. And many men are on the verge of becoming rubber band men because they are having a schema affliction. That schema affliction has caused many men to fear the dangers of dating and relationships. And because of that fear of dating and relationships, many have imploded from within, which actually has led to an explosion. Mercedes Moore was a woman that was a victim of the rubber band man because this man is something that I call a psychosimp. A psychosimp is part of an unconscious pathology called unconscious simping. And unconscious simping stands for supplementing irrational male patterns. When a man supplements irrational male patterns, he does something as it relates to behavior modification called feeding that narcissistic supply. And because many women are narcissistic in this modern milieu called America, it has created in some forums the psycho simp. Sean James talked about that in his book called The Man Crisis. Go check his book out on Amazon. But I had a discussion with my brother and my dear friend Anton Daniels, the millionaire, and he did an article, a scholarly article, talking about the ravages that many men are going through because it's believed that many men are not motivated because we don't elevate our boys at the same level that we elevate our girls. And in behavior psychology, there's a concept called needs-driving behaviors. And I told you in the past that a hopeless man is a broken man, and a broken man is a dangerous man. And men become dangerous when they don't get the validation, when they don't get the guidance from their fathers. And with 29% of men that are virgins, and with over 7% of our children being born out of wedlock or in single-family homes, and over 50% being born out of wedlock, it's caused some men to implode because they don't have any sense of purpose or identity. I've said in the past that fathers give their sons the power to become successful in life if those men themselves know what their inherent worth is. But I'm seeing something that's very critical. Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu talked about it, where boys feel like they don't get the power and the same elevation that the girls get. And sadly, many men in America have such low self-esteem that they tolerate anything. I want you guys to sit back, relax, and enjoy this show as I bring it to you live from the greatest state in the Union, the Tar Heel State. And I want you to remember this. If it ain't 7, it ain't kosher. If it ain't kosher, it ain't right. There are 7 steps that a man must go through in order to become an optimized male. Female psychology, male mental health, and male physical health is paramount to the functioning of a man. I want to ask you the question again. Are you at risk of being the rubber band man? Enjoy this show. Take notes. Be well. We're about to drop some fire for your mind in a minute. Sit back and enjoy the intro. Get ready to take notes. Bringing it to you live once again from the greatest state in the Union, the Tar Heel State, where the topography is serene, pristine, and verdant green, where every day is Father's Day, and where manhood is part of hills and valleys, victories and failures, and whereas men, we don't agree on all things or ideologies, but tonight we come together as allies of a common cause only to dissipate once the crisis is over. Now listen, I'm about to drop some fire for your mind. But before I drop that fire, let's explore why we are doing the Manhood Chronicles. All right. We're bringing to you live from the greatest state in the Union, the Tar Heel State. And listen, guys, we're going to talk about something that's been on my mind and pressing for a while. And the topic of the show is, are you at risk of being the rubber band man? I did a show with Anton Daniels, the millionaire, recently, and we were talking about why many young men in America are not given the same credence a lot of time as our girls. You know, and I know that boys don't get the same opportunities and the same outcomes as it relates to validation. And because of that, some of our boys have imploded from within. And because of that implosion, a lot of our young men and men don't know what their worth is. Now listen, I do these shows because these shows are important to the functioning of men. And therefore, if you like what I'm doing, hit all notifications, share the content, and if you have not donated, donate to $7 Small. So I'm going to play the video about me and Anton Daniels, and we're talking about a phenomena in society where boys are not given the same credence as our girls. So sit back, guys, take notes. Tell me if you think what I said makes sense. What's wrong with black boys and men in America, but all men, as it relates to them getting validation? And the recent guy that killed Mercedes Moore, is it because he had low self-esteem? Is he a product of lack of having validation? Or is it all of the above? So hold tight. We're going to play a show with me, Anton Daniels, and you guys take notes.
You are in a corporate environment. The way that you level up is not necessarily because you are the most successful or the hardest worker. You're supposed to be that anyway. But the way that you level up is largely because people like you, right? And so the way that I'm able to navigate through that space is that I've told all of my superiors throughout my career, hey, I'm not here to try to make myself look good. I understand that I look good as a result of making you look good. When you level up, it benefits me too. So women, what I'm trying to tell y'all is that when your man look good, when he's winning, ultimately that translates into you. So you don't always have to have this me mentality. It comes along with the success when you're talking about being in a relationship and being in a marriage. It often affects you both. So it's not a competition between you. It's a competition to see how successful you can make the person that you're with. And that translates into you also. What's up, Kosher?
What's up, brother? What's going on? Greetings to the panel, and shout out to my man, Antoine, man. Anton, you're the greatest, brother. But listen, what you're saying is 100% truth. What the professor is saying is very much true. You know, I've always said on my show, Anton, that a broken man is a hopeless man, and a hopeless man is a dangerous man. And so many men are circumnavigating through this maze called life as they've been raised in what's called a matriarchal society where they have not been given principles to abide by, Anton, which in essence causes forms of self-conflict. And, you know, if you look into the tenets of theology, you know, Jesus was so great because he had the admonition and the guidance and the purpose of his Father. But the modern American man does not do things based on principles. He do things based on how he's been trained to acquiesce to the whims of a woman. Now watch this. World travel is the great equalizer because I said that there are 7 steps that a man must go through in order to become an optimized male. World travel is one of those. And so once a man travels outside the confines of America, Anton, he begins to see that he has some inherent worth and value. But so many women in modern times I call carnal hypergamy. Carnal, more or less, reverts to what the gospel says, carne, or which is the flesh. You got women that got what's called an overinflated ego when they take good, decent men. You know, like back in the day in the factories. You from Michigan. You know, a man making a decent salary would seem as a worthwhile man.
You know what's so kosher? Before you
yes, sir,
that, just to speak to your point and that I agree. Right, shout out to Erica Williams. That's my girl. I always support her platform. Erica, if you wanna jump into this, or you have any kind of opinion whatsoever, I value you. I think you dope. I support your platform. I think that you are absolutely awesome. So let me just say shout out to my girl Erica. I rock with you. Let me throw that in the chat just in case. You don't have to. I know that you'd be busy. I know you get into the bag, Erica. But that's for Erica. I'm gonna bring other people up in a little bit also. But I want to make sure that Erica is also, she has the floor also to be able to join in along with my man Kosher. But Kosher, just to speak to your point, with me being from Michigan, right? One of the things that you are right about is that we always aspire to get into the plant. If we could make $30 to $32 an hour, oh man, we would be straight. We would be absolutely winning 1,000%. But go ahead.
Right. So once again, there's a condition called kosher hypergamy. Kosher hypergamy is more or less based on a construct, Anton, that I call the commodification of glorification, which basically means a woman is working with a man to help galvanize that man, Anton, to be the best version of himself. That was your mother and your grandmother and your great-grandmom. They were good women that saw, even though in the inherent value, they knew that they wanted a man to provide and protect, but they didn't overinflate themselves or oversell themselves.
Okay.
But the modern woman is a victim of a concept that I created called carnal hypergamy. Carnal comes from the Greek word carne, which means flesh. And she seeks to exploit men at his own peril. And so you got modern women, unfortunately, not all, but many, Anton, that want top tier men. But guess what your grandmom and your grandfather, grandfather and your great grandfather got back in the day? They got women without kids, and they got women that were potentially virgins or low bodies. But you got women that have an overinflated ego of themselves. They want the top tier men, but they're not giving the men what they want. I call it taxation without representation and the mental breaking of the American male, to the point that these men sometimes deconstruct and they're dangerous to themselves and they become psychosimps. And that's what the professor is talking about right now, because Anton, in clinical therapy, there's a such thing called behavioral science. And then behavioral science needs drive behaviors. But when these men are not getting their needs met, they have what's called an inward implosion. They implode within. And eventually, if they don't deal with that implosion, it turns to an explosion, and they go on killing sprees, or they become very violent because, as you said earlier, women want the top 10 to 20% of men, which is an example of what I call carnal hypergamy. Because those women, Anton, that want those men, those women back in the day would not be worthy of the resources that they're looking for. But when a man travels, you know, I'm with a group called IBMOR. I'm going to be in the movie called Frustrated 3 with my man Al Grease.
Okay.
But when men travel, they see that they get more respect and they don't have to do as much because those women have been conditioned in patriarchies to honor and to respect men. And so those
Let me
men
ask you a question, Kosher, with regard to that.
Yes, sir.
Because I haven't done a lot of traveling as far as interacting with women outside of the United States. I've traveled a whole lot. But with me being married for 17 years and being relatively young because I am under 40, I'm not really sure what the real interaction is with women outside of the United States. And I believe that what you're saying is true. Let me ask you a question with regard to that.
Yes, sir. Right.
On the Lapeef Let's Talk platform, we brought up a couple different women at one time. This was the show that Amir had jumped on and we had brought another woman named Nina. Nina was some form of Hispanic, right? And Amira was Lebanese. Amira moves a specific type of way, but Nina, although she was raised to kind of think like that, kind of have adopted the same type of mentality that a lot of men complain about, although she was incredibly beautiful, which was one of the things that got her over here, right? She was one of those type of women that kind of think similarly to how a lot of what men are complaining about women are acting like today, right? Do you think that these women evolve and become more Americanized, so to speak, once they get here? So it's not necessarily based off of how they were raised, but more or less based off of the opportunities that they're presented?
No doubt. I totally think it is. You know, you posed a very poignant and a very thoughtful question. As a clinical therapist, human beings are integrated, Anton. They're soul, body, and spirit. We look at it in extrinsic, meaning the external environment, intrinsic, which means the internal. So there's a such thing called nature versus nurture. Now, if a woman have what's called proper safeguards, like strong families, she's a spiritual woman, which she's kosher, then she's not going to more or less be revert back to those negative American tendencies. There's a brother that I know called the American Brazilian. His wife is from Brazil, and she still has maintained some of her Brazilian roots. But it depends on the generations. If she's first generation, second generation, or third generation, the more she gets away from the old ways, the more she becomes Americanized and becomes conditioned or more or less socialized in a negative way, Anton, to be more like modern American women, which seek to usurp and more or less get more than what they're really worth. And so American men have been so conditioned to be servants of women. Dr. T.S. Johnson created a concept called the concuserve, meaning a concubine and a serf, where they want to serve women at the expense of their own happiness. So correct, you're correct. There's a such thing called negative socialization and healthy socialization. Some of these American women have been socialized to expect more from men instead of giving something in return. So yes, I agree with that 100%. This is going to be a great topic because I believe that many men are suffering in silence. Shout out to my man, Mr. Albert. He said, great topic, fellas. Thank you, sir, for the $10 super chat. And so the topic that we're going to talk about, the link has been dropped, and I want to have a conversation because there's a prevailing belief that men suffer in silence because they're not getting their needs met. There's a prevailing belief that some or many modern women don't validate men and only use them as commodities for their own selfish needs. And because of that, similar to the Mercedes Moore situation, that man snapped. He snapped because he had a schema affliction. And so to the men that are listening, also the ladies, you can pop in and join in the conversation. We got about 7 in the house. Hopefully it'll build up at some point before I go see clients. But this has been on my heart since Anton and I did the show about 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago. And the story, the essence of the show was talking about how many boys have actually checked out. They're not engaged and they don't take life serious. And it's believed that many boys don't take life serious anymore. It's because of the conditioning where boys are not being validated at the same rate of our girls. So shout out to my friend Mika G. She said, she hadn't seen the show, but she can only imagine. Shout out to TJ Randolph. What's up, sister? Shout out once again to Mika G. She said, great, the great and only one, Mrs. TJ Randolph. So let's have a conversation, guys. I dropped the link. Have you been a victim? Have you been a victim of not being validated? Have you been through a journey in your manhood chronicles where women have used you and exploited you for money, where you thought about snapping or more or less had homicidal tendencies? Is the American woman wife ready in this loaded question? And do you love and value yourself as a man? Anton and I had that discussion because the scientist that he more or less had a clip on was actually talking about it. And see, guys, you're not going to be the best version of yourselves focusing on women. Women are a necessity, but women can be a detriment if you don't have your proper things in place. My channel is dedicated to empowering men and more or less brokering with good sisters that want to learn and want to listen so they can understand some of the struggles of men are going through. But I want you guys that have gone through something similar to come in and share your story in this journey called the Manhood Chronicles. Because with over 73% of kids born in single-parent homes, with over 60% born out of wedlock, this is something that we need to talk about and address. I said in the past that a hopeless man is a broken man, and a broken man is a dangerous man. Mercedes Moore was a victim of a broken man when that man snapped, and he eventually killed her because she played the role of a fool. Listen to this. There's a song in the past, in the 70s, that says, everybody plays the fool sometimes. But it becomes a time when the fool gets sick of being played and he becomes the rubber band man. And so some of you guys that are listening are at risk of becoming the rubber band man. There are some women that have been at risk of becoming the rubber band woman. But since this is a man's channel, the focus is on men. So I got the link. I've dropped the link. Let's have a discussion. Let's talk about the current trends in dating in modern relationships. If there are some women that want to come in and join the conversation, let's join the conversation on this fall afternoon. And let's talk about what you guys see in modern trends in relationships and how these trends are actually leading to declining marriage rates, declining relationships, broken men, unloved men, and men that feel like they have been displaced to the point that they exhibit something called displaced aggression. And yeah, you're right, TJ. It's definitely some old songs. You and I old heads. We the Gen X, so shout out to TJ Randolph. TJ, come on, you want to, dear. Let's have a discussion about this conversation if you can. And we're talking about, once again, beware of the rubber band man. Because a lot of men have snapped. Men don't see the benefits of relationships. Men don't see the value in relationships. Many feel that the modern woman is not worthy of long-term relationships. And many men are victims of a conditioning called blue pill simps. Many men are unconscious simps because they supplement irrational male patterns. The great teacher, the Apostle Paul, said, when I was a child, I spoke as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. And so when I drop fire for your mind, I want to open up those cognitions. I want those neurons and synapses to come together so that you can finally see what your worth is. And to the men that are listening, you are able to see your worth when you become an element of the 7 principles or the 7 pillars to male health or male optimization. And part of that is something called world travel. I'm part of a group called IBMOR. The late Charles Tyler. I'm going to be in the movie called Frustrated 3. And when you guys travel, you'll begin to see the world from a totally different perspective. You don't have to be like the psycho simp that killed Mercedes Moore. You don't have to be the fool, drag his knuckles on the ground and listen to old songs by Teddy Pendergrass saying the whole world is laughing at me, silly fool, because you don't know what your worth is. It's time for men to be empowered. It's time for men to know what their worth is. It's time for men to fellowship with other men so they can get the game so that they won't become victims of their own ignorance. And you know, and I know that many men that are listening have been victims of their own ignorance because they don't have fathers to give them guidance. They have been raised by their moms. And some of their moms are genuine, but some of their moms are ignorant and exploitative. And they teach their sons the way a woman thinks instead of teaching their sons how men should do things based on principles. When men do things based on principles, they get the outcomes that they want. And when men do things based on principles, it makes that woman respect him by looking up to him. And therefore, she gets the love and the attention that she so needs. When men and women work together, it becomes a symbiosis or a symbiotic relationship. But when the man glorifies the woman at his own expense, he defers power instead of getting power. Now listen, to the ones that are listening, men or women, click on the link. Let's have a discussion. Let's have a discussion because these conversations are vital in this space. You're not going to find a licensed male therapist in this space. You're not going to find it. You're not going to find too many men that's going to help you to modify your thoughts. We can talk about money. We can talk about a myriad of things. But until the mind is elevated, you will continue to go into a circular roll of despair. Shout out to my dear friend, TJ Randolph from the Gen X Nexus. What's up, sister? What's going on?
Good afternoon. I woke up late this morning because my husband allows me to sleep in. Yeah, so we talking. I had to get my coffee before I
had to get your coffee.
Had to.
Well, I'm about to drop some fire for your mind, but go ahead, sister.
Wow, it's so true. Women. I've heard it said before. I didn't come up with it, but particularly Black women. We raise our daughters and we love our sons.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
we raise our daughters regrettably, with the mindset that we need them to be this quote unquote strong, independent woman because many of us didn't have our fathers. So we're raising our daughters not to think that they need to have a man around because we didn't have one.
Right. I agree.
But what we fail to realize is that we're cheating our own daughters by neglecting them, or not neglecting, but not showing them how to cater to their man, how to be a helpmate, because we didn't know how. I tell you, since I've been married, we've been together for 3 years, married for 2. I didn't realize how much a good woman really inspires a man.
I agree.
And the truth of the matter is, nobody wants to be used. Mm-hmm. And that young lady, Mercedes, she used that man, just like women have talked about. Right. They don't want to be used for their bodies or whatever. Men don't want to be used either.
Yes, ma'am. I totally agree.
And when you talk about, like you said, coming together for the symbiotic relationship, it is just, I get emotional. It's just so, I've never experienced it like this. Mm-hmm. And I just got finished talking to my husband, and ladies, hear me. Boy, your man will walk through walls for you if you pour into him like we poured into our girlfriends. Let's just keep it 100. Right. So this is good stuff, and I'm better late than never. I did get the revelation, but that's why I'm here. Ladies, you want this here, because I tell you, it's nothing like it.
Right. And the good thing is, TJ, you have evolved. You weren't always this cerebral and this very matured and seasoned woman. I listen to your show sometime at TJ Mosaic. Go check out TJ's channel. And you evolved to become the woman that you've become. What have you learned in this quest called life that where you more or less directly and indirectly probably use men, and it left you a victim of your own ignorance?
Well, and here's the thing. Using is just not money. Right. Ladies, hear me on that one. Using is just not money, because see, I've always worked. But using is depriving the man of leading.
Right.
Even when you have the finances, if you will, because leading is just not about finances. That's an aspect.
Right.
But leading, that is using, when you are using your power to take his. Because women, how we do. If it's not done our way, it ain't right. That's wrong. So sometimes the way I learned, one, I talked too much. I had to have the last word. It was my way because my way was better. No, it was just different. And also another way we use to say, well, I'll pay for it. I'll do it myself. Even if you can, shut your pie hole and let the man do what he's going to do.
Right.
That's the biggest thing I learned. I talk too damn much.
Yeah, a lot of them talk too much.
And nobody, I'm not going to say nobody, but okay. The man is like, I jokingly said it last night. My husband is like, I'll go off in my tirade about whatever I'm dealing with. He says, do you want to hear what I think, or are we just going to hear what you think?
Right.
So that's how, and it's humbling because, ladies, we can have this career, and a lot of times we tie our identity and our self-worth to our education, our career.
I totally agree.
And we think that because we've amassed this professional, this level of professionalism and education, that somehow gives us the ability to talk down, even though we don't think we're talking down. We're talking down. And so we look around and we've got all this success, but we look around and ain't nobody following us, ain't nobody to the left or the right of us. And if we got a kid like I did, and I had 18 years of pouring into her, and then she gonna look around like, oh, it's just me. and my dog. I didn't want that.
Right. How long did it take you, TJ, to come to this epiphany that you were being a victim of your own ignorance? Because, I think I've seen some pictures on you on Facebook. And, you were cute. And,
I was, boy.
And so, when you thought you were the ish, how did you treat men? How did you treat men, TJ, when you thought you were the ish?
I'm so sorry to say that. And I laugh because, Kevin, I think, has kind of banned me because he don't allow me on the show. But he will tell you that I guess I could be considered a mean girl.
Really?
Because again, I was, and not intentionally, and I didn't even realize I was. I didn't realize I was until years later when people start reminiscing about the way you were on campus. And I'm like, I did that. So I would, and it wasn't about money, but I thought I was smarter than most people. And I was always militant. So I was going to tell you about yourself.
You must be an Aries.
I'm a Gemini, and you don't know you didn't know who you was going to get.
Yeah, you don't know who you're going to get. Right.
So, I was fine too. Stop it. You could not hit me in the ass with a red apple. Stop it now.
Right.
But that only gets you so far, ladies, because stuff starts sagging, wrinkles start coming, lines.
Right.
But you couldn't tell me that then. I thought I was always going to be fine.
Right. And so when you think about when you sabotage relationships, when did you come to the threshold and say, you know what, enough is enough? Because, you said that Kevin banned you. Why would he ban you? Explain that.
I don't know. I'm just joking, but I've tried to call several times and he won't allow me on.
Yeah, because y'all went to the same school, right?
We went to OU together, yes, and we went to the same high school, but he's 2 years younger than me, so we didn't really get to interact until college. Right.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Mm-hmm. When you try to give this free game to the younger women, how do they respond? Do they repel it? Do they reject it? Do they call you a fake, a clown, a pick-me? What do the younger generation of women call you when you try to give them this free game?
I'm really grateful because many have received it. Okay. And again, when I started this channel in May of this year, my goal was if I could just get one to understand and then that one teach another, then I've done what I was called to do. Because to be honest, I probably would have continued to wallow in my own ignorance had I not had that traumatic relationship that it was in 2017 that probably could have taken my life had my brother not been there.
Let's talk about that. Talk about that after you finish.
And because I would go to therapy because I'd have these various relationships and they would never work out. Mm-hmm. And so I would go to therapy, and then it wasn't until that last one that it was so traumatic that left the physical as well as emotional scars. It broke me.
Oh, wow.
And I went to therapy, and my therapist, I thank him even to this day. And he says, Terry, I want you to sit back because, you have a relationship, with your therapist. Sometimes you go when you really need them, and then you taper off, but then you have that relationship. And so because he had known me, he said, Terry, let's go back and look over the course of these different things and these different relationships. And he said, I want you to, to peel back. And there were some similarities of the men that I was picking or allowing them to pick me. And he said, Terry, there's something missing in you. You need to figure out what's missing in you before you can put yourself out there. And it was during that time, and I know everybody's not able to do that, but I took off work about 2 months because I felt like a failure, and I couldn't understand why I kept, like I said, my career was great, but I couldn't master relationships, and broken people attract broken people.
Right. I agree.
And I didn't get that at the time. Mm-hmm. So, I'm grateful. I mean, I'm not grateful that I had to, have the bruises, the physical bruises, but that was the catalyst to do a deep dive into, Terry, quit trying to fix people. Mm-hmm. And that would be a lot of the things, because again, women, if we are the quote unquote leaders, I'm not going to call masculine or alpha, but, some people have leadership tendencies, men and women. But women, a lot of times, if you don't have something to balance it off of, you don't know when to turn it off or when to dial it back. And a lot of times women, we want to take care of things and we want to fix things. And that's our way of showing that we care and that we love. But we don't know when we're doing too much. Right. And when we're doing too much, a man can take that as we're trying to take their power, even if we're not. But that's what they may, because we don't know. Right. So I think it was that. It was that. Sometimes, I don't want ladies to have to go to that point to be, broken and bruised. Men either.
Well, it sounds like to me that you almost lost your life in that relationship, similar to Mercedes Moore. Is that fair to say, Terry? TJ, I'm sorry.
No, you can call me Terry. That's my name.
Right.
Yeah, I honestly believe it because had my brother not been there to get him off of me. Yeah, because again, it was just me and him in the house, but my brother was there. Mm-hmm. And how many of us have seen those episodes of Snapped? Fatal. Right.
And that's why I call this show Danger. Beware of the rubber band man, because the rubber band man, once he gets stretched and stretched and stretched, he snaps. And that's why I titled the show from the group from the 70s called The Spinners, because the rubber band man. A lot of men are rubber band men, Terry, because they are simps. But after a while, even a simp gets angry and he retaliates once he finds out he's being played. And, I keep telling some of these women out here, you can't keep playing with people's emotions, man. When men are emotional, they're very vulnerable because men don't get emotional by nature. It's not our first response. Our first response is logic, not emotion. But when a man gets to a point when he's fed up, that man could snap. And when that man snaps, you could lose your life. So it's important that we have these conversations, because even though this channel is dedicated to empowering men, I love to hear conscious sisters like yourself that have learned from the error of their way. I love to hear from women that are willing to understand how men think, not chameleons that come in men's spaces only to try to sabotage it, but sisters that want to listen, sisters that are willing to learn, and sisters that are trying to teach the other younger women, like the gospel say, let the older women teach the younger women. And not saying you're old, Terry. I ain't trying to say you're old, but it's saying let the older women teach the younger women.
It's, to me, here, check this out, Kosher. Mm-hmm. It's an honor for me. Mm-hmm. It's an honor that women consider me an elder because, again, there's a responsibility that comes with that.
Right.
And I don't take it lightly. Mm-hmm. So, I'm grateful for it. And I'm honored by it because that's what we need to do here. That's what we need to do here.
Right. And, I created a term called kosher hypergamy, right? And there's a terminology called carnal hypergamy. Kosher hypergamy is more or less predicated on a principle where most women 20, 40, 50 years ago, TJ, where they basically wanted a man to provide, protect, and give them provision. But those women were not exploitative. We're going to talk about that. But the modern woman, TJ, is a predator. She seeks to usurp the power of a man mentally, but also financially. And that woman is a victim, or more or less a predator, because she is more or less trying to use a man, and it's called carnal hypergamy. In theology, there's a word called carnal, which means the flesh. And just like a predator and a wild animal or a lion, a person that's more or less uses carnal hypergamy is a woman that's trying to use a man, exploit a man, and to more or less denigrate that man at his own expense. And so because of that, marriage rates are dropping precipitously. Many men are traveling abroad because they want to be loved and treated fairly. And I'm going to tell you something, TJ, many men feel that some of the women in these spaces are not genuine. They feel like they study men instead of what men want. And they feel like some of our women, not all, some of them are just chameleons waiting on their next victim to more or less usurp power and authority and become carnal in their hypergamous nature. What's your take on that, TJ? And were you at one point carnal hypergamous?
Interestingly enough, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I don't disagree with it. Mm-hmm. I will say what's interesting is that in our age group, in the Gen X,
Right.
I don't, and I could be wrong, but I don't think many, well, I'll put it like this. Many of the women that I knew were not carnal hypergamists. We didn't really seek to use men in that way. I think we wanted someone that had a work ethic, that had, that we saw as potential, but something started to shift after the 2000s.
Right. Right.
Specifically after 2005.
Right.
There was a shift there. It was a shift of, what can you do for me? And that was something that was not there when I was in school. I don't remember that. And if it was, I don't remember it.
Right. Well, you know what? It was traces of carnal hypergamy. You remember the song called "Ain't Nothing Going On But the Rent"?
Yes.
You gotta have a job if you want to be with me.
Right.
Yes, and so
that's true. That's true.
And that was in the 80s. But hold tight, Terry, because I want to ask you some more questions. I love your insight. But Cam up, brother, and let's join the conversation. Cameron, unmute yourself, brother, and join the conversation. And what are you getting from this conversation, brother? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, brother. Give me 1 second to come up.
Okay, all right.
Just want to say I've listened to your show quite a few times, and I never got the chance to come on, but I do respect the work and of the work that you've been doing. And hello, TJ, how are you? All right, let me come up.
All right, how you doing, brother? Greetings. You sound like you're from the UK.
Yeah, I'm from the UK. Yeah.
Okay, great. So what are you getting from this conversation? I didn't create the word hypergamy, but I did create a terminology called kosher hypergamy, because kosher means fitting and proper and clean, but also carnal hypergamy. And because of that, Cam, many men have become the rubber band man. They've been put in predicaments when they snap because of that schema affliction. And because of that schema affliction, many of them don't know what their worth is. What are you getting from this conversation? And what would you like to add as it relates to dating trends in modern America?
I think that I can talk for, particularly with black men, is that I feel as though we're often expected to have a lot of restraint. So the restraint is also looked upon as to be almost superhuman restraint. And then when we do tend to react in negative ways in certain situations, I think the demonization that comes with that is not fitting, because the situation that brought that man to actually react was quite a long while before he particularly reacted on that initial one incident. Okay.
And so where have you, when you think about the man that killed Mercedes Moore, have you ever been placed in a predicament where you had homicidal thoughts or homicidal ideation because of how a woman treated you?
I'm actually in my son's mother is actually a woman that I would say that is put herself in an opposition to me and is constantly trying to get a reaction out of me. This is a person that would do anything and say anything. And the reason why, I suppose there's quite a few reasons, but one of the enabling reasons that I give her is that she knows that I don't react to certain situations. Because let's be honest, if I was a different man in a different way inclined to react in a physical way, then maybe she wouldn't be so quick to behave and do certain things. But I definitely can appreciate men that have been in situations and not necessarily reacted in a bad way, but showed resistance to their reaction and preferred to go about it, solving the problem in a different way. It's very, as you said when you was talking about earlier, men react in different ways, and emotion isn't our first initial response to things.
It's not. Right.
It's normally a kind of fight yourself out of this situation. And I feel as though women have always been good with their mouth and can also be very quick-witted and smart. And often men are not going to resort to that and resort to something else. But I don't think the abuse on the emotional and mental side is looked upon as much as the physical side, when I think that they can both be devastating.
Well, I would say that it's probably worse mentally than physically because everything starts with the mind. The great teacher Paul said, whatever a man think, that's what he is. You can get a physical laceration and that will last temporarily. But if you get a mental laceration, that lasts forever. And so Mika G said, I was more of one to be a fixer. I'm too much of a giver and warm heart to take advantage of a human being. But we all have our stuff that we take on. And so you get an applause for that, Mika G, because you have been a giver and you appear to be a kind woman. But I think the Gen X women like TJ, I believe Mika G is a Gen X. I'm Gen X. I came out of high school 90, supposed to came out in 89. And we begin to see a precipitous turn. TJ, let me ask you a question. We always knew that there were exploitative women that were more or less vectors of what I call carnal hypergamy. They wanted to infect a man with their toxicity and their venom. But those women that were vectors of carnal hypergamy, would you say that was the norm, or would you say that was only far and few in between from your opinion?
You know, going back to college, I think that was few and far between. And interestingly enough, when we perceived those women, we talked about them bad, you know, because again, you know, I'm not going to say we shamed them, but we sure, you know, we were not applauding that. We were like, you know, you giving women like us a bad name, for lack of a better phrase, because we weren't like that. We wanted to work and we wanted to help our men. We wanted, to that song, you got to have a job. Yes, right, it was, you know, basically meaning you got to have some type of job. It wasn't, you didn't have to be a baller, but you had to have some type of job, basically be willing to work. But when we saw those women that basically the Brittany Renners that were out there, we talked about them like they had tails. Right. Because again, we're like, you just one of them. So it's nothing new under the sun, but the difference is it's applauded. It's applauded. Right. I totally agree with that. It's almost like up is down, down is up. And the things that the women probably thought about in private, they're now manifesting it in the public. And there's no excoriation of those bad behaviors. It's actually glorification. And that's why a lot of men, TJ and Cameron Cam, are basically saying, the hell with relationships. What am I getting out of it? Most guys don't feel like they're getting a virtuous woman. You know, if you think about your grandmom and your great-grandmom, TJ, most of those women didn't have children. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're correct. I would say that many of them were virgins. If they weren't virgins, they weren't with a lot of men. Is that fair to say? Very fair to say. And even growing up myself, you know, and again, I've said before, you know, my mother had me at 17, and going from those mistakes of her youth, she taught us, you know, to hold on to your virtue. Right. That your, you know, virginity is something to hold on to save. Right. So even in those instances where there were women who, and again, single mothers weren't real, you know, we had the teenage mothers, but again, those women who may have had several children by different men, those women were kind of cast off. They were pariahs. Right. And then they were telling younger women like my mother, who told me and my sister, don't do it our way. Don't do it my way. So there was nothing glorified about it. And again, the women of that I grew up around, my mom, hold on to your virtue. Don't give yourself to just men, because again, you're worth more than that. No man is going to want to be with a loose woman. Right. So again, it was different. It was totally different. And you know, the thing that I don't get is that, you know, women say, you know, I want a man to pay all the bills, you know, and, you know, and the thing I don't get is that the exchange back then for paying all the bills, the man gave her 100% of his work ethic and his currency, but she gave him a virgin, no kids, and she was wife ready. But many modern women, TJ, now have a condition that's I call taxation without representation, and the mental breaking of the American male. Many men have been broken, TJ, because some, not all, modern women want men to be exemplars of the past while they remain modern women. What's your take on that? I agree. And it's interesting. In certain spaces, I think it's true on both sides. But I definitely agree that women, particularly younger women, and I'm not even gonna put it on younger women because there's some old fools out there too,
Right.
which is even worse in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
A old female fool, that's stupid. But I agree. Wanting the man to do everything and you give them very little or nothing, and I I don't know where we went wrong, and I don't want to blame it completely on social media, but
Right.
I will say there are contributing factors. And the reason why I say that, when we start thinking about the first reality shows, when we started becoming voyeurs into other people's lives, that is when we started to say, oh, well, shoot, I want to live my life like that. And what did we see? We saw materialism. We saw superficial tendencies. We saw, you give me all this and you take care of me. You take me on these trips and I give you my sex.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Which is nothing, because sex is mutually pleasing. And I'm gonna drop some fire for your mind, Terry. Dr. Tia Son Johnson did a show recently, and I'm gonna actually use that show as a parrot point. I call it the fragile flower, because many women think just because they have a vagina, their sex is good. But there are many men that have had sex with women. They said the sex was trash,
garbage.
But they just don't tell them because they don't want to hurt their feelings. And so many. It's a percentage of our women, TJ, that just assume because they got a warm vagina or I'm not trying to be graphic, or wet hole, that's all it takes. But no, you got to have rhythm. You got to have motion in the ocean. You got to know how to use your body, because there have been plenty of men that say her rhythm was garbage. It's starfish sex, and she does.
I haven't heard that yet.
And
a sack of potatoes, but
a sack of potatoes, right? And the one, you okay, DJ? And the woman doesn't please him, and so many men have been conditioned to be simps. Many have been conditioned to be unconscious simps because they're not aware of it. What's your take, TJ, when you look at modern men now compared to the men when you were going to high school? Would you say the men now actually tolerate more than the men from the past? And so before you answer that, shout out to my man, Von Bryant. Von Bryant said, in my workplace, there are many female supervisors that treatment can be very condescending. I often have envisioned myself snapping. Right, brother, I totally agree. But I always figure out a way to deal with that situation. So that's some fire for your mind. Because for your mind. The situation,
kosher clinician.
Because in a situation like that, you can snap. And see, TJ, I use the word fire for your mind because in clinical psychology or clinical therapy, when the neurons and synapses come together, your connections are awakening. The body has something called an electric currency. And so you become illuminated mentally when everything is in congruence. And so my job is to teach men how to modify those negative thoughts so they won't snap, so that they won't become the rubber band man, so they'll know what their worth is, so that they can travel outside of the contextual framework of America, so they can go places where women actually validate them instead of excoriating them. Now, before we have the conversation, listen, guys, there are 25 people in the chat. If you guys like what I'm doing, please donate to the channel. I am a licensed therapist. I'm about to go see some clients in a few minutes. But because I love empowering good sisters, but also broken brothers, these shows are important. So if you like what I'm doing, share the content. Hit all notification buttons, because some of you are subscribers, but you haven't hit the notification button. So if you're subscribed, hit the notification button, hit the bell, all notifications. And when you hit it, put a 1 in the chat. And also share the content. Please share this content, because I don't want no man to become a rubber band man because he's been invalidated by a woman that's trying to infect him with carnal hypergamy. Now, Terry, back to what I was saying. Add to the conversation about what I was talking about a minute ago.
I think that there are, it's twofold. You have men, young men particularly, but not just young men, who want to be in relationships. And because society has relegated their contributions to what they can do for a woman financially, they find themselves in the situations that they are simping for women that have no intention of being with them. Mm-hmm. Conversely, you have men who've kind of figured that out and say, F it.
Right. They're saying F it, right?
They're going to get what they're going to get. I'm going to get what I'm going to get.
Right.
So, and the sad part about it is, I was talking to someone about this, rejection is not anything new.
Right.
There in high school and college, there were guys that liked me that I didn't like. There were guys that I liked that didn't like me. Mm-hmm. But the difference is now it's so exploitive. And it's done so publicly. I was talking to my husband the other day and I said, when we had situation when people we didn't like, the most you could do was put their name and telephone number on the bathroom wall to talk about, the bathroom wall. But now the bathroom wall is worldwide mm-hmm. with a camera to watch, for likes and views. Mm-hmm. So my thing with young men particularly, and I talk to the young women, and ask what you want. But for young men, I say, don't do that. If a woman wants to take you out, if a woman wants you to take her out and spend all this money, she ain't the one. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. She ain't the one. And there are women who want something virtuous. And that's another reason, Kosher Clinician, that me and my daughter do that broadcast on Saturdays. Right. Because she's 27.
Right.
And she talked about, hey, I'm cute, but I ain't that damn cute.
Right.
And she learned that when she was in her early 20s, say, yeah, and what she was looking for in a man had nothing to do with how much money he made and had nothing to do with how he looked. Mm-hmm. She looked mm-hmm. for character. So again, that's another reason
character. Right. Yes, ma'am. Right.
we are doing that because you all are getting it from my perspective as a Gen X. You're getting it from a perspective of a millennial who says, nuh-uh, women, we ain't all that. You better get your mind right. Mm-hmm. You better get your mind right, or you're going to be by yourself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I do think that some men are simping because, again, it has been glorified to be used, and to be a user. Mm-hmm. And it's unacceptable.
And I always like to reference songs from the past. Teddy Pendergrass said, "It's good to love somebody, and somebody to love you back." And it feels good to be loved. And I tell men when they travel abroad, women universally, guys that are listening, are all the same. A woman is a woman. There are some women that practice kosher hypergamy. There are some women that practice carnal hypergamy. But you can go to Brazil, you can go to Africa, you can go anywhere. A woman's going to be a woman. Women only respect strength and power. Correct me if I'm wrong, Terry.
You know what? It's funny. It's true.
It's true.
But
right.
But women, sometimes we have a confusion as to what we think strength and power is.
Right. Break that down for me.
Because strength and power, I thought, and my daughter grows me real, and it's so funny to hear her, peep her mom's game from back in the day. She said, "Mom, to be honest, back when you were younger, from what you tell me, you wouldn't have been interested in Lawrence." And I said, "Well, why do you say that?" She said, "Because you thought strength and power was walking in the room, all eyes on me, telling you this, and just all everybody gravitating toward you. But strength and power can also be reserved. Right. It can be observant. Right. It could be speaking when you have something to say, but speaking with authority." Mm-hmm. And that is true. Mm-hmm. But she was absolutely right. My thought of what strength and power was to you to tell me how much power you had and to, put me in my place aggressively. No, that's not it. You know what? Hold that thought. I got a retirement branch. Call me. I'm be right back.
Yes, ma'am. That's fine. That's fine. No problem,
Coach,
TJ.
I wanted to ask you
Go ahead, brother.
Question. In terms of dealing with a out of control woman, what would you suggest tools for a man to obviously not reach that point of snapping?
Well, there's an old saying when I worked in law enforcement. I used to work as a mental health correction officer. It says the way you start out is how you hold out. Mm. You teach women how to treat you based on how you start out. Human beings are very malleable. Human beings are social creatures. So the first thing I would do, you need to set your boundaries. You need to set your boundaries and make your boundaries clear. But if you've evolved too far in the relationship where she doesn't respect you, you don't do anything. You just leave her alone. It's literally that simple. You cut the head off. Leave her alone. Don't call her. Don't tolerate her until she respects you as a man. And many times it's too late because you've given her power as a man. You've taught her how to treat you by what you allow. Do you see where I'm coming at?
But this is the thing: when they have leverage, what do you do then? Because
What do you mean by leverage?
So it could be they have children, or you have children with them, and you know that, well, they know that they could use the child as leverage against you, because ultimately you're going to have to put up with it in order to get access to the child. Yeah,
I see your point. Listen, that's a serious predicament. But even in a predicament like that, she's probably narcissistic. And the more you gravitate to her, the more because either way, you're going to lose anyway. Would you rather lose in dignity or would you rather lose as a simp? Which one do you want?
Yeah.
Do you see my point? Because you're going to lose anyway. Either you're going to be a simp with no dignity or you're going to be a man with dignity.
I think that's what a lot of men struggle with, is that middle ground there, because ultimately, if you're a good guy, you ultimately want to be involved in your child's life.
Sure.
But it's the struggling to going through all of the things in terms of, the combat with the mother and the court system and so on and so forth, that you have to go through just to gain access to do what you feel is right towards the child. So men often struggle with that middle ground, is to say, not to say that it's not worth it, but what type of man am I going to be at the end of all of this? And can I actually set out what I said that I was going to do in the beginning, which is offer my child a father? But reaching that, people often say it's not the end of the journey, it's the journey itself. And sometimes the journey is so tiresome and takes a toll so much on men that it's not that it's not worth it for the child. It's just that some men can't take that journey because they know at the end of that journey what they're going to look like and how they're going to behave and how it would have unfortunately changed them as well.
Right. And so Frederick Douglass said it, and I always quote this term, that power never conceded to anything without a struggle. It never have, and it never will. If you go back to the tenets of theology, Cameron, there's a tenet in theology that say that a woman will have a desire for a husband, but he will rule over her. So after the fall of man, there's been a cosmic war between man and woman where they both been trying to vie for power. And it doesn't mean that the man used, unjust rulership over his wife. It basically means that man said, listen, I'm going to guide you. At one point, you had the freedom to do what you want to do, but now I'm going to guide you and you're under my authority. And authority does not mean that the man abused power. It's righteous authority. It's just authority and power where he sets parameters. He said, listen, if you're going to be my queen, you got to follow my rules and my expectations so that we can build together. And either a woman's going to cooperate or she's not. Now, I'm not talking about abusive or exploitative men that always say, it's my way, you can't have a voice. I'm not talking about that. That's an abuse of power. But I'm talking about men that are fair. They're very judicious. They set their parameters. He tells the woman, this is what I expect. She either adheres to his expectations or she can go. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you're going to lose when you simp to a woman. Women respect masculine men. And Terry, you dated men in the past. Let's break it down from a dichotomous perspective, the men that you looked up to versus the men that you have no respect for.
It's so funny. I didn't realize it at the time. And that's another reason why we have these conversations, because you move the way you move. And unless you get a deep understanding of yourself, you just doing what you seen or you're doing what you do instinctually. My ex-husband, my daughter's father, it's interesting because the same thing that attracted me to him was the exact same thing that I couldn't stand in the end. He was the kind of man that my way or the highway, you don't get to say nothing. And so that, to what Kosher's position is an abuse of power, because again, a man does lead, but he it's kind of like in the military. I'm a military person, served in two branches of the military as an enlisted and as an officer. As a leader, you hear the information of your subordinates, but as a leader, you make the decision. but they still have an opportunity to tell you, what they see, because they see it from a different lens. Because as a leader, you're up here
Right.
with your vision, and the subordinates are here because they're in the trenches.
Mm-hmm.
But when they give you the intel, you make the best decision that you can make as a leader. Well, it's the same way in a marriage or in a relationship. Mm-hmm. As me as a helpmate, I'm in the house every day doing the stuff, but he makes the decision. I give him the intel and he makes the decision. Well, but the thing about it with my ex-husband, he was very, I don't know, I won't say abusive because it wasn't that, but he was his way or the highway. Conversely, I had a guy that I dated for 4 years. I had to lead him every sense of the way. And I know he loved me and I loved him, but to Kosher's point, I couldn't respect him. Mm-hmm. But, he said another thing, you teach people how to treat you. Right. So from the very beginning, I led everything. And the way you start a relationship is the way it's going to be.
Yes, ma'am. Right. It's a baseline. It's a baseline. And shout out to the intentional millionaire. You're correct. I did say that. You can either lose in dignity or you can lose as a simp.
That is a good quote.
Fire for your mind. Maybe I need to pen that. That's fire for your mind.
Okay,
that's fire for your mind.
But moving forward now, my husband.
Right.
And again, hear me, ladies. And this is really, and this is interesting, because most women, if they have a father in their life that's an active father and it is a good father, they're going to seek a man that's like that. However, if they have if their father is not in their life, a lot of times we as girls, we glorify the parent that's not there. Mm. Even though we see the example of probably what we shouldn't want, because my dad was a hustler. Mm-hmm. And you can interpret that however you interpret that. But he was a hustler. Mm. So what I gravitated toward were men that were, because hustlers are manipulated. They're charismatic. Mm. They're manipulative. They're controlling in their own way. Mm. And I gravitated toward that. But what I should have been gravitating toward is exactly what I have right now was my grandfather. My grandfather, work ethic, protector, provider, leader in his community. But he didn't talk a whole lot. But people gravitated toward him. Mm-hmm. Even, he wasn't the oldest in his family, but everybody gravitated toward Uncle Joseph. That's my husband. He don't talk a lot, but when he talks, it's like E.F. Hutton.
Right.
Because he has something to say. Mm-hmm. And he leads in such a way, it's not overbearing. When it's time to be quiet,
right.
Me. And I listen. So there's a difference. So I had the man that I ran over. I had a man that ran over me, but then I found someone that the example that was really what I needed, which was a man like my grandfather, because my grandfather was my everything. So essentially, I ultimately found the man that was like the father figure, the good father figure in my husband. But years prior, I wouldn't have appreciated that, even though that's what I needed.
Right. Shout out to my man, the intentional millionaire. Thank you, brother, for that $20 cash app. I'm grateful. And to the people that have not donated, please donate to the show. Thank you guys that listening. I'm glad you guys and honored that you guys listen. I love what I'm doing. I love empowering people. As I said earlier, I love talking to sisters like TJ. I love talking to the sisters that are trying to get it together from the Gen X generation to teach the younger people. Because TJ and our time on this earth is slowly expiring. Now, we're not fossils, but our best days are gone. We might got another 50 years left if we take care of ourselves. But let's be real, our best days are behind us. And so I do these shows so that some of you men won't become unconscious simps. I do these shows so that some of you men will not lose yourself in the dignity of your worth as a man. I do these shows because some of you men have not had fathers to inspire you. We're over 70% of kids born in single-parent homes, and we're over 60% in out of wedlock homes. A lot of men have deferred power due to ignorance. TJ, I want to ask you a question, and then Cam, I want to ask you a question. But I'm going to ask Cam first.
What did your father teach you about how to deal and react with women?
It's a very good question. I didn't have a father. Same kind of typical story. Even though it's in the UK, it's very prevalent over here as well.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Very prevalent. When I went to school, and let's say there was probably a class of about maybe 32, maybe to 35, there wasn't any individual that had a father. And that was in my whole class. We never saw anybody's dad. It was literally just mums all the time. But I never had, it's sad to say, but Uncle Phil was my dad. That's who my dad was. I used to look up to him and watch Fresh Prince and think about what he would do or what he would tell me in a situation, because Will was that kind of cheeky kind of character that he used to get himself into trouble, but he really had a good heart at heart. So I used to think that Uncle Phil was my dad or my father, and I would think about the things that he taught he taught Will and he taught Carlton, all the rest of his family. So yeah, I didn't have I don't think my father's ever told me something that I'd look back and say, you know what, that was a very knowledgeable and glad thing that you told me that. No, I didn't have that experience, unfortunately.
And right, and that's the issue. There was a time, TJ, and you remember it, when boys had fathers. And even though some of those men were broken men, those men taught their sons basic principles. They taught their sons basic principles. Some of those men didn't, they were victims of post-traumatic stress. Some of them
make you cry. Don't cry.
Oh, I'm sorry, dear. I didn't mean to make you cry. Oh, I'm sorry, Terry.
No, I'm all right. I'm fine. I made it.
Right. Well, at least you got compassion. Go ahead, Terry. What are those tears about?
Because I'm sorry.
You're fine, sweetie. You're right.
Because fathers are so important. They're so important. Even with your struggles, it's just so important. It's so important for girls to know what a first love should look like in a man, and it's so important for boys to show them what they should be as men. It's just so important. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Oh wow!
I did have my brother had a different father, and the animosity that was between him and I, even though we grew up in the same household, was that his father liked me and kind of took on to me, but I learned that I had to be somebody likable, because if I wasn't somebody likable, then nobody wouldn't give me any attention. So I spent a lot of the time trying to entertain people, or especially adults. So they would be like, yeah, come, bring him along. I used to look outside the window when his father used to come and pick him up, and I'd be, your dad's here kind of thing. I'd be more excited than he was kind of thing.
Right.
He grew resentful for the fact that, his father liked me, and ultimately we was sharing him a bit. So he didn't really want me around, but I just wanted a father figure kind of thing. So I used to try and get in where I could fit in kind of thing with him. But he did teach me some things, but ultimately it was more out of pity, if that makes sense. It wasn't out of it wasn't my father, so I couldn't really expect anything else from him. But I did learn a couple of things from him.
Right. Shout out to my man John Evans for the $20 cash out. Thank you, brother. Your generous donation is merited. And I love you guys. I love what I'm doing. There's some good people that are watching these shows. When I see TJ shed tears of contrition or have heartfelt tears about this man's plight, it lets me know that what I'm doing is the right thing. Therapy is often chided in the Black community. Many are actually suffering in silence. Some of our men and some of our women are walking around woefully ignorant. Many are shooting themselves in the foot because they have been victims themselves of their mother's ignorance, a condition called vicarious trauma. When you hear a woman say, I'm a strong and independent woman and I don't need a man, that's a broken woman. Because what a wise woman would teach her daughters is that I'm going to be soft and self-sufficient until I get a man, versus I'm strong and independent and I don't need a man. That's a woman that's broken. And a lot of that brokenness is going to leave a lot of you women by yourselves. Winter is coming. Winter for many is already here. And the key is, what are you doing to empower your sons so they can become the men that you want? But sadly, some of you women have not had the fathers to hug you, to teach you how to respect the authority of a man. Some of you women have not had fathers to more or less give you the instructions about virtue as a woman like TJ had. And because of that, you are actually attracting the men that you don't want, which are simps, unconscious simps that is. Men that defer power. But what's happening now, guys, is that a lot of men are waking up, and there's a beta male revolution. Shout out to Roger Allen Curry, where a lot of beta males are actually waking up and saying the hell with it. And as I said earlier, many men are saying, give me liberty or give me death, because they're getting sick of the disrespect that they're getting from some of these modern women. They're getting sick of the malfeasance that they're experiencing, and they're looking for women to be compliments to a man instead of being adversarial. It's nothing like a feminine woman to rub your head, after you get home from work and say, baby, I got you. It's not like a woman, she's cooking a hot meal on Sunday and you playing some music from the 90s. Terry, you remember Anita Baker and, playing the whiners. It's nothing like it. And so when a woman is giving a man what he wants, guess what, ladies? That man will give you what you want, which is provision, power, protection, and love. Women need love, but men need honor and respect. Go ahead, Tara. I see you got your hand up in class. Tara in class, you got a hand up.
Okay, listen, ladies. When and here's the thing: when a man finds a wife, it don't take him long. It don't take him long to say, "I want you to be my wife." My husband and I, we met in July of 2018. He asked me to be his wife in December of 2018. Here's the thing, also. I get so much joy out of, cooking for him, and when he comes home and, make sure that he can smell the food cooking, and then I'm cooking too, if you know what I mean. And, because I want him to want to come home. My husband's a truck driver, and I said, my goal each and every week is to make sure when you leave here on Monday, you can't wait to get back to me by Saturday. And to when he is in this house, peace. Peace be still in this mug up in here.
Peace be still, right? No doubt.
But again, I didn't know that in my 20s and 30s.
Right.
I didn't know it.
And tell the audience why you didn't know it, TJ. Why didn't you know it?
I wasn't taught it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I was old enough to pay attention, my grandparents were much older. The things that I saw, God, I don't hold it against my mom because she did what she had to do. But we did have a talk about how what I saw growing up, how it affected the choices that I made.
Mm-hmm.
Because, my mom did some things and endured some things because she had to feed her children.
Right.
That included abusive relationships herself. I have a scar on my arm that I've had since the age of 16, protecting her from being stomped in the face.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So she didn't teach it, but again, we all learn. And she said, she's apologized. She said, I didn't know. And so that's why I didn't know, because my mom couldn't teach. And even to that point, my daughter she didn't learn how to be a wife from me because I wasn't one.
Mm-hmm.
She saw me as a military officer telling folks what to do and not taking no stuff from nobody. But I didn't know that I was showing her, and she said this out of her own mouth, that I showed her how dominant I was in a relationship.
Right.
And she just revealed that in our recent broadcast. Because I said, what did I show you? And she said, well, basically, you showed me how to be strong and how dominant you were in relationships. And I didn't take any of the men that you dated seriously. Wow.
Right. And that's dysfunctional.
Yes.
That's very dysfunctional, because the feminine always defers to the masculine, and the masculine always complements the feminine. And Drago's Flame, what TJ just said was this. Fire for your mind. The kosher clinician. So I had to drop some fire for your mind because what TJ said was powerful and it's true. And listen, I don't know if we will ever go back to the stability that we had of yesteryears, TJ. I don't see it. It'll take 2 or 3 generations, in my opinion. You know, by that time, Jesus probably came back by that time. But these conversations are still necessary to the women that will listen. Therapy is very important. And to some of you guys that have been victims of being unconscious simps, and also some of you women, you need your schema to be remodified. And so if you need schema modification, please contact me at kosherclinician@gmail.com. That's kosherclinician@gmail.com. Let me drop some fire for your mind. Let me help you get them neurons and synapses in order so that you can remodify that negative thinking so that you can get the outcomes that you want. GDO said that what have they done to the family? What rebellious spirit ever taught that fathers are not necessary or interchangeable? There's a lot of work to be done to rectify dysfunctional environments. And brother, you are 100% correct. There's a lot of work that needs to be rectified to deal with the toxic behaviors that we're having. And so I agree with you 100%. Now listen, Terry is dropping some excellent gems. Cameron's also giving a lot of great insight. TJ, let's go back down memory lane back in the 80s, you know, when we had groups like Shalimar and Switch, Shirley Caesar, the Winans, back in the 70s, the sideshow began, Cam, he don't know nothing about that. He don't know nothing about that.
I was going to say I know the 80s, but I don't, the 70s is a bit, that goes over.
He don't know nothing about that. And TJ, when romance and music was, it was normal, TJ, for us as kids growing up to say, if I like you, TJ, I write a note and say, will you be my love, yes or no? Click the yes button, or, The great divergence that you've seen now compared to the past is a sign of dysfunction. Would you say, TJ, growing up in Oklahoma, I don't know if you grew up in the city or the country, that you saw more paragons of femininity of the past compared to now?
Oh my gosh, yes. I was born in Los Angeles and we lived in California until I was in middle school. Then we moved to Oklahoma City. But absolutely, there was, there are some people, some men that talk about romances, whatever, but there was. And because with romance, that incited and inspired women or young girls to be girls, to be feminine, and to be demure. Absolutely. The writing love notes and talking on the phone to all hours of the night. Absolutely. But we lost that. I don't know when. I have to say maybe the 90s is when it started, because the music, it influenced us just like it influences people now. How many of us, well, you don't remember, Cam, but Kosher, you remember certain songs would come out and say, oh, that's baby making music. Right.
Make this last forever, Keith Sweat.
Okay. So, but now it's like, now flip it up, rub it, whatever. Right. Oh, no. And then the WAP. I mean, that's bananas. And here's the thing, too. One of the things that, and I want y'all to hear me, youngins, it's old, but it's right. A young woman who wants to be a feminine woman, she will appreciate a love note. A man will appreciate a love note. I said, me and my husband started dating, and we still do it. We send each other love songs. After I think our second date, he wrote me a handwritten note.
That's powerful. That's powerful. Yes, ma'am.
I still have it. Me and El Wapo did a Cocktails and Conversations, and he talked about his labia, and when he took her out on a date, and she said, well, he had paid for the dinner and spent X amount of money, and she said, well, let me pay for the drinks or something like that. Not only was in that that sparked something in him, say, oh, she's just not about what she can take, she giving something too.
Right.
Me and my husband's our first date, I talk about how he paid for the meal, We went across the street to the movie theater. He couldn't find his credit card. Now, he had just took it out to pay for dinner. So when he walked across the street to look for his credit card, I went on and paid for the movie tickets. Mm-hmm. So he came back and he got his credit card. He said, I'm gonna go ahead and get the ticket. I said, oh no, I already got it. It sends a message to the man like, okay, she's just not about what she can take. She's gonna give too.
Right.
Early on. Mm-hmm. So that's romance too. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you're absolutely right. It was different, and we're not gonna get it all back. We're just not.
No, we're not. I think it's too far gone. It's too many competing factions.
It is.
TJ, to get it back. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
But those who want to, like my daughter and my son-in-law, like you, Kim, I get that vibe from you. Let's get it where we can fit in, and make the most of, and be an example for who wants to have the results, to have the outcomes. Because why live this life in misery? And I said, I don't know how much time I got.
Right.
But
right.
I'm so glad that I got it right before I get out of here.
Yes, ma'am. That's powerful. Right. You learn from the recompense of your error. You have a heart of contrition, TJ. Some won't learn. There are 8 stages of psychosocial stages of development. And a person can be chronologically a grown person, right? But they can be developmentally something else. You and TJ are at our stage of our psychosocial development, if we're healthy, called generavity versus stagnation. Eric Erickson talked about that. That's the stage where we're actually leaving a legacy for the next generation. That's generavity. But stagnation means we're still stuck in our own way due to self-sabotage, due to faulty thinking, or due to ignorance, or due to rebellion. The last stage is something that the woman Paco went through with the show that I did, Death of the Man Tree, it's called Ego, Integrity versus Despair. That's the last stage of your psychosocial development, where you're on your deathbed. On your deathbed, you're going to ask yourself 2 questions if you believe in God and you're about to transition into the glory world. Have I left a legacy for the generation to come? Or are you going to be on your deathbed angry, cussing, and mad because you didn't live your life on purpose? And that's why I do these shows, because I don't want no man to be a victim of being an unconscious simp. I don't want a woman to be a victim of her ignorance because she's self-sabotaged due to vicarious trauma of her ignorant mom. And these shows are important because when you're on your deathbed, if you get to that point, that's a very dark time when you're about to take your last breath before your body is about to cross over into the spirit world to either see God, or if you believe in hell, yeah. And so that's very sad. But because most churches now don't preach objective theology, most of the people tell you what you want to hear, I got to keep it kosher. Because if I don't keep it kosher, then I would be lying to myself, and I wouldn't be true to you all. But you got to live your life on purpose, because as TJ is saying, TJ and I are part of that Gen X nexus where we saw traditionalism, but also we saw modern decadence. And right now we're at the crossroad between modern decadence instead of traditionalism. So I saw a time, my mom and dad have been married for over 50 years. I've been married for over 26. I'm used to that time of that generation where we saw, a semblance of the traditional past. Terry, TJ, what do you think about what I've said? And then Cam, I want you to add to it. And then whoever else is listening, I want you guys to come in and also talk about being unconscious simps.
Well, it's not much more to say than what you say. it just isn't, And again,
that's that Leo swag. Y'all Geminis, y'all love intellectualism. Geminis love intellect. So
okay,
is that Leo swag?
Right, and that leadership. Hey, for real though. But you're absolutely right, and not only with ignorance, there's such a thing as willful ignorance.
It's willful ignorance, right?
Willful. Mm-hmm. I really don't have anything that I can add to it, because again, you're absolutely right.
Right.
And again, I'm grateful to my daughter that despite the trauma that she saw in her mother, she knew she wanted something different. And she sought it.
Right. I totally agree. Shout out to my man, Mr. Stewart. I want another young man to come on and pop on. I've dropped the link for the call in. Have you been a victim of being the rubber band man? Have you been influenced with homicidal thoughts or homicidal ideation based on how you've been treated by a woman? And if you have been a victim of being tempted to become the rubber band man, let's have a discussion. Now, Cameron, while they are actually logging in, when you look at the women of the UK, what are some of the negative variances that you see in UK women that remind you of modern American women?
I mean, I think people that live in America think that it's really different over in the UK. We set the trends for some things, but we the majority of the time we do follow the States. So everything that's happening over there in terms of, you know, ratchet behavior or supposedly black on black violence, that happens over here and is very prominent over here as well. It can't be as high because there's not enough people over here, but in statistics wise, it's very high and it's very prevalent. When you talked about the situation where has a man or have I ever played a simp, I think a lot of men that didn't have fathers, you would have played a part of a simp for many years of your life because you thought that you had to be a good guy. And the good guy means that, you know, you're the one outside holding the flowers when it's raining and she's off doing whatever she's doing, kind of thing. And that was the way how it's supposed to be because you thought that you had to be a good guy in order to meet the right woman. But life has shown me, especially, it's rather to be yourself. And as you say, have some integrity than really die as a simp. But there's definitely instances where I've definitely been a simp, and the advice for me to be more of a simp was coming from my mother. Just an example, you know, my son's mother done quite a few things, and I was told that I should just, you know, take it on the chin kind of thing and keep on going. I should willing to do anything for my child, which I get the extent to what she's talking about, but there wasn't a consideration to my mental health and how much I can take and how much I've already been through already. So I've definitely got to that stage where I wouldn't say homicidal thoughts, but I'd definitely say I'd had negative thoughts in what I wanted to do to that individual. And that was brought about by the 11, 12 years of, you know, constant, I don't even know what words you would really call it. It's just the persistent testing of somebody's character. She would use a derogatory word against me. And if that didn't get a reaction, it would be, okay, your whole family and, you know, so on and so forth. So if she would get a reaction sooner or later, because it was just a matter of time, because we're all human. There's only so much things that one person can take. So when you're dealing with somebody that is set a goal in their head that this is what I want to do, I'm going to want to try and get this person to that level to where they actually react. And me personally, I've never been in an experience like that before, but she had previously. So it was more common for her to go from 1 to 100 rather than me. I'd go 1.5, and you know, but this individual took it all the way there, kind of thing. And that was because of the experiences that she had in the past. So, you know, yeah, sorry, I think I went on a bit.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes, go ahead, TJ. Go ahead there. Go ahead.
Okay. Ooh, that got me fired up. Because, you know, when I think about that, and I'm not speaking from a woman that did it all right, because I didn't. But women, when we have children and we're not with the man because of our own hurt, we try to make y'all pay for it with your kids.
Why is that though?
Because we're hurt and we don't know how to channel it properly. We don't get because you may not want us no more. We may not have this, you know, determined or realize that we the reason that you don't want us no more, that you have moved on. We haven't done the work to find out why we pushed you away. Now, I'm not saying that there's some men that aren't right, because that's that too. But there's some things that we do, and we instead of saying that we effed up, we make it you, and then we use your child against you. And see, here's the thing. I'm saying, women, check yourself, because the only people that are going to be hurt by it are your children. Are your children. Yes, you're going to hurt the father, but you're going to hurt the person that you say you love the most. And again, the truth of the matter is, lady, whatever you think about these men, you chose them. I chose them. And again, and my daughter even said it. Yes, a man may love his child, but how much you expect him to take?
Right.
And my daughter says, a man will say, you know what? I'm just going to document every time I tried to reach out. And when my child is old enough, I'm going to share with them everything I did, because again, my sanity is worth something too. So stop it. Ladies, stop it.
It's almost as though the individual would like me to go to their level and play their dirty game.
Yes, so she can use it against you. So don't.
Yeah, I haven't. It's not within my.
So they can use it against you and say, "See, he don't." I'm just gonna say it, and I don't give a dadgum. I don't give a damn. Document, and again, document, and I'm done.
Right. And you know what, Tara? I'm so glad that you have evolved into the cerebral woman that you have, because many are going to die alone. Many are going to the grave with regrets. Many will be on their deathbed with dreams deferred. Langston Hughes said, what happens to a dream deferred? And when people try to give some of these modern women admonishment, they reject it. I've had women come on my panel. Haven't seen them since. And so I see the women like you, the women like Mika G, the women like, I can't think, Miss Parker, the women like Dr. O. I see those women are genuine women. But some women come in these spaces expecting men to change the message to assuage their emotions. I'm not doing that. I will not compromise my integrity as a man to assuage any man or woman, but definitely not a woman. And it doesn't mean that I don't love sisters. I love good sisters like TJ, Mika G, sisters that want to listen, and sisters that are genuine. These conversations are important because many men are suffering in silence. Many men are on the verge of breaking, because with 29% of men that are virgins, many men are not actually operating in their true masculinity because they have been mentally emasculated. And can you imagine, you're 29, 30, never had sex with a woman? That's not even normal. Because back in the day, Terry, most men and women got married around 18, 19, or 20. So they were having sex, But can you imagine a man that's 28 to 30, he's still a virgin, looking at porn, in the basement, eating Cheetos and drinking Coke. Because, he's not getting anyone to inspire him. And I tell guys over and over again that it gets better later. It gets better later. I'm enjoying the latter stages of my life, because at 6'5", and with the voice of Zeus, TJ, I'm enjoying my life because I've worked hard, and I'm now, reaping the benefits of hard work. So shout out to my man, the Intentional Millionaire. How you doing, brother? What's going on? Give me a minute, brother, as I'm reading these comments, because these shows are very important. So, Intentional Millionaire, what are you gathering from this conversation? And I want you to share with the audience where you've been tempted to simp, and why are so many men, American men, breaking because of maltreatment?
Well, the first thing is I love your statement.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
I really appreciate the statement.
Hold tight. Hold tight. Fire. Drop some fire for your mind. Your culture, your mission.
And I think this is a great conversation that needs to be had. I can say for me, I really never experienced the full level of being a simp, only because my high school sweetheart, I had my experience and that set the pace for me. I was with a young lady. We was together. I graduated before her, and the thing was, we was eventually gonna get married, but the goal was for us both to get our careers in order. She got hers first. I got mine next. But in the process of when I was getting mine, she wanted to jump the gun. And I pretty much told her, hey, I looked in the eyes and I told her, hey, I want to be with you. I want to rock with you. However, we had a plan, and now you want to jump the plan, and I'm not going to jump the plan where you got your career, but I didn't get mine. And she looked me and I told her, but once everything is said and done, we'll go the distance, and I'm going to marry you. She looked me in the eyes and said she wasn't willing to wait. So with that being said, I said, you know what? I realized at that point, a person can love you, but you need more than love.
Right.
So with that being said, that set the pace for me. And since then, because my dad was in the house, but when I graduated high school, I'm the youngest of 5. He said he was going to get a loaf of bread. He never came back home.
Right.
So with all that said, it helped build me up to the man that I need to be today. And since then, I think for me, it's always been easy dating, things like that, because I always set standards right up front. And I knew it was different for me because a lot of women wasn't used to a man telling them no. Because I'm very clear on what I want, how I want it, and either you're gonna accept it and rock with me. If not, you can keep it moving because I could do bad by myself. I don't need another headache. I mean, I got my own issues and things I got to work with just with life being black in life. So
right.
I don't need no extra stuff added. So I think for me, that's why I enjoyed the conversation, because I know one thing I did pick up from my dad though was he was very upfront with stuff that people he didn't like and stuff he did not like. So that's one trait that I knew I picked up from him. So I knew going into the dating market, just be open and honest and tell a woman what it is that you want, what you will accept, and what you're not going to accept. So I just, for me, that was and that's the reason why I decided to cam up, because I do know for me, I never really fully got that experience because I experienced it so young, but that helped set the pace for me. But I think for most people that they may not have that type of experience. So,
well, men should do things based on principles anyway. You should never do things based on feelings. See, feelings are very fickle. They're very fleeting. But when you do things based on principle, it's similar to what God said. He said, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word will stand forever. And so God the Father was a type of archetype to the modern man if he more or less listens. His word, which is his law, supersedes feelings. And the problem with a lot of men, they've never seen men that actually stand up based on principles. And so when you're standing on principles, when the winds of adversity come to beset your soul, you won't be easily set aside because you have standards and principles that you go by. But I want to ask you a question, TJ. I want you to share with the young men some of the manipulation tactics that you think many modern women employ, and some of the things that you actually did yourself to confuse men as it relates to power.
Well, first of all, to the intentional millionaire, thank you. Because I think one of the things that we do, men and women, but primarily women, I can only speak from my experience. We think that we can change you. And a lot of times, and again, it's our ignorance, and lack of knowledge. And ignorance is lack of knowledge and understanding. We think that if we love you enough, if we sex you enough, if we do whatever enough, that eventually you will come around to our way of thinking. Now, I will say to you, many women don't are not maliciously manipulative, but we're still manipulative. And the reason why I say that, because I was one of those, like, if I love you enough, if I sex you enough, if I, do all these things that you say you want me to do, and then even though you say you don't want to be monogamous, but because I'm such a great woman, you'll eventually want to be monogamous with me, even though you told me from the onset that you don't want to be monogamous.
Yep.
I'm thinking because I'm just that great. I'm that great of a woman. You'll eventually come around to my way of thinking. So I think, from my experience and for those I know, I don't think we maliciously manipulate, but we do. We do manipulate. Mm-hmm. Even to the extent of, saying we're pregnant when we're not. Okay, let's just keep it 100.
Right.
This just saying, I can't live without you. If I can't have you, nobody else will. And not to say that I'm going to do something, homicidal, but I'm going to make your life hell. Because I'm gonna keep badgering you till you come around to my way of thinking.
Right.
And I'm only hurting myself because you're not thinking about me. So I think, in the manipulation we talk about, like I said, I mean, I'm honest. I said that I was pregnant at times that I wasn't.
Wow.
I said, even when I got pregnant with my daughter, I was taking my birth control pills, but haphazardly. Mm-hmm. And then surprised that I got pregnant. Come on now. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest here.
Right. That's how I got. That's how I got.
Mm-hmm. But, at 26, at 20, when I got pregnant, I was not owning the fact that I wasn't trying to get pregnant. I'm like, well, I was on birth control pills. No, I wasn't. I mean, I was on them, but I wasn't taking them right. Because here's the thing. Once I had my daughter, I never missed another day. And guess what? I never got pregnant again. How about that? Mm-hmm. So it did work. So, and that's the manipulation, and again, and I tell my nephews, never underestimate a woman who thinks she's in love.
That's true.
That's powerful.
That is very true. Right. And what I've learned, TJ, is this, is that women tend to date opportunistically, and men tend to think through the rose-colored glasses called love and romanticism. I think women have adjusted to the times. Men are still slaves of the past, where they thought relationships, giving them flowers and candy and all that good stuff, is still necessary. And what I'm learning in this day and age now, women only respect power and strength. You got to make her earn that. You just can't give it to her, because if you just give it to her, she's not going to respect it. Tell me if I'm wrong, TJ.
I think there's a degree to that. Yes, absolutely. And a lot of it goes to the maturity of the woman. Mm-hmm. Because again, if to use myself as an example, back in my 20s and, maybe 30s, but definitely before I had my daughter, how many times have we heard, oh, he's just too nice. What does that really mean exactly? Mm-hmm. And don't you want somebody to be nice? But what we would do is take that niceness, and either we would, say, I'm not interested, or we would milk it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We will milk it to go to dinner, go to whatever. Yeah, we liked you, but we really didn't like you. So, like I said, it's nothing new under the sun. The difference is we just see it because it's out here, on so many different levels. And we are seeing not only the glamorization of such manipulation, we're seeing the outcome of it, because some people are benefiting from it, but some people are really, some people are dying from it. And we're seeing that too.
Right.
So these things have been happening, but we just get to see the results of it more.
Right. Many are dying from it. And shout out to my man, what's his name? James Pittman, for the $10 Cash App. Thank you, brother. Thank you guys for all the donations. The Ingram experience is in the house. What's up, brother? What would you want to add to this
What's
conversation?
going on, folks? Hey, hi to the panel. Hey,
What's
thanks
going
for having
on
me
in your
on, brother.
experience?
Yes, sir.
Hey, what's going on, Intentional Millionaire? I had to join in, man. You made a profound statement that stood out, and the words you used was the unconscious simp. That is a very powerful, profound thought, because you think about it in life, a lot of men are just going through life. You know, a lot of guys are, part of the social programming, not realizing that they're not living life with purpose, and they're not being intentional about their own happiness. And that's something that's a huge problem that I see today in American society and even around the world, because our culture spreads like a virus.
I totally agree. And, when you look at men now, Roger, I want you to go back in time and tell some of the younger men times of the past where you almost became the rubber band man, where you almost snapped. But also a time, Roger, where you were an unconscious simp, where you were supplementing irrational male patterns. Because men stand on principles,
Right.
and also men do not give their power to women that are not worthy of it. So tell the young men when you were an unconscious simp and how you more or less supplemented power to the chagrin of your own ignorance.
Well, I think we all have been there, but my biggest thing was even in relationship when I first started out with marriage, and this idea that it was sold that romantic love was more important than respect. And I did a video on that, and that's something that a lot of men get caught up in, believing that if they just keep doing more, you're going to create a better relationship and you're going to make the situation better for you. That if you do more, you're going to get the respect back and it's going to be reciprocated. And I think that's the fallacy that we've been led to believe by the music, by the culture, and not understanding that you have to require value, the value that you earn, what you bring to the table as a man. There's nothing wrong with you having standards and requirement for women, because women have standards and requirement for us.
Right.
So, and this idea that you keep producing value and you're not getting respect back in return, I think that's the fundamental problem that I've learned as a man. So right. My whole mentality is value driven. I give value and I expect value back.
Right. Terry, so many women try to shame men into bad relationships. And I respect your honesty, Terry. I respect your honesty a lot because, as I said earlier, women tend to date opportunistically because women by nature are survivalists. Women want to survive. Women are nesters. They want to nest. And men tend to think date through the rose-colored glasses, or what I call the velvet-colored painting that Dr. Tierson Johnson talked about. What are you telling your daughter about having virtue and integrity in relationships? And what do you tell other young women about having virtue and integrity in relationships so that they're not putting a man at risk of becoming an unconscious simp, but also snapping?
Well, as it relates to my daughter, I'm just so grateful, and I've shed many a tear because most mothers, we don't intend to break our children. We don't intentionally, mean to set them up for failure, even when we do. So in my case, as it relates to my daughter, I'm so grateful that despite the fact that she saw me moving in a more masculine frame, that she didn't see me taking advantage of people. She saw me being dominant, which is something she shouldn't have seen. But she did see, that I was giving, that, maybe that was a problem because I was a fixer. I did too much, taking on things that a man should have been doing. So as it relates to that, I'm grateful that she did not take on that posture of being manipulative or controlling, because I was controlling. She wanted something different. But as it relates to these younger women, I am sharing with them the things that I did do wrong. And here's the thing, at the time that I was doing them, You couldn't have convinced me that I was doing something wrong. That I was doing something wrong. And you make a good point. I was a survivalist, and then when women are, and I'll speak for myself, when you think you're in love, you are desperate, and you will do anything you can that you think will get that man or keep him.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it's not healthy for either of you, and then when it backfires, instead of looking at yourself, you'll make make it be his fault. So that's what I'm telling young women, but also, and that's another reason that me and Danielle do it together, is that she can tell them, because sometimes they ain't trying to listen to a 54-year-old woman.
Right, that's true.
But they will listen to a 27-year-old woman who is married, who they just yesterday they celebrated 5 years together. They've been married for 3 years, 5 years together, and they will listen to her because they say they want to be married. But then Danielle asks, do you really? Do you really want to be married? Because if you really want to be married, you got to deny yourself, because it ain't about you. So what I say to, what I say to my daughter is what she said to me. Actually, because she grew me, she was doing it longer than me. But what I say to young women is, you got to unlearn some stuff. You have to be willing to unlearn some stuff. You have to be willing, when a man tells you what he wants, that's what he wants.
Right. I totally agree.
When me and my husband got together, when we were engaged, we did premarital counseling. And it's to your point, when we did premarital counseling, he said, and I have my book, but I can't remember, but I know one of the first thing that he said a man needs is respect. Mm-hmm. When I got married to my daughter's father, we didn't have premarital counseling. We didn't have any counseling. I didn't understand, or was I even, I felt like I knew everything I needed to know about being married, which I didn't. I was married before, but I was not a wife. Mm-hmm. Let's be clear. Mm-hmm. So the premarital counseling, and I keep that at the forefront of my mind now. Everything I do, everything I say, I want to be respectful of my husband.
Right.
So that's the difference.
And you're correct. Even in the Gospels never told the woman to love the man, but it told her to honor the man, and it told the man to love the woman. Men and women are complements of one another. If a woman give a man honor, respect, obedience, and loyalty, that man will turn around and give her the emotion called love. We're complements of one another.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
To that point, you mentioned that, I think maybe a little bit ago, you said if a woman respects and honors her husband and inspires him, he will give her everything.
Yes, ma'am. If it's genuine, yes.
I get emotional, and my husband's like, why? Because I get emotional all the time. But
yes, ma'am. Right.
3 years into it, I just look at and I'm so grateful for him. Mm-hmm. And I'm grateful, and you're exactly right, because I want to make sure his needs are met. I respect him, I value him. It amazes me. It's like what I give to him, he gives me more.
Right. You're exactly right. You're right. And you know what? And you know what, Terry? You can't give that to any man. You can't give it to a Dusty man. You can't give it to Raekwon and Man. Right. Just like a man can't give it to Barquisha and Shaniqua. You can't give it to them. They got to earn it. They have to earn it. And I'm going to prove my point how men and women are actually in an alignment with the God paradigm. God the Father, God the Son, man, woman, children. Where the praises go up, guess what? The blessings come down. And so when a woman give a man honor and praise and respect, guess what? He's going to shower her with blessings, which is his love. He's the sun. He projects light to the woman. He gives her, that's what he's going to give her. Fire for your mind. Give her some fire for her mind. But she got to give him something in return. The intentional millionaire. You appear to be a millennial, I believe. I think you are a millennial. Your dad, you said, left when you were at an early age, and your dad probably was going through trauma. Your dad probably felt like he couldn't take care of 5 kids. Can you remember a time where you deferred power to a woman and then make her earn your love and respect?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I got multiple examples.
Let's talk about it. I want you to educate the young men because they need to hear it from an older millennial. Go ahead, brother.
One of the things is when I date anyone, I tell them up front that weight is very important. And if you're not going to focus on your weight, if it gets out of hand, then I will help you. But after that, if you don't take the guidance and the steps with the help, then I won't be around. And I'm very clear on that. Another scenario is, a young lady that I was dating at the time, she was into these because she had natural hair, but she liked to watch all these hair videos. And she wanted me to come watch hair videos. And I'm like, I don't watch hair videos because I ain't doing no woman's hair. So I can care less. Right. And in those examples, though, to some people that may seem mean or whatever, but I'm not a woman. You need a girlfriend for that.
Right.
And I think too many times it showed. And then later on, she came back and said, you know what? I ain't never had no man tell me no, but I get it. And I say, yeah, because you ain't dealt with me. I don't know about them other dudes. So, but those are the type of scenarios that I was able to do. But I did learn that from my dad. So my dad left when I turned 17 because I had just graduated high school. However, he was in the house. He was there every day, but it was just some things that he could have done better. However, I still never... looking back, I still appreciate that he did make a stand for stuff that he truly believed in, and he was able to say no and stand on that, right or wrong. And that was one of the things that, I picked up on. And the thing I would share to the young men is this: one of the most critical things that they can learn from their dads is how to stand on something and make a decision, even if it may not be the right decision based on what we may interpret it as, but he's able to make a stance, because over time you get better at making stances. But through that, you build on your character, but you build on your decision making, which also builds on your leadership.
Right. Ingram experience, when you hear women like TJ Randolph, that has more or less learned from the error of her way, and she's done a 360. How does that inspire you as a man? But also, what do you teach your son about demanding power from the women that he's dealing with? Because your son is an athlete, a big-time athlete at a Division I college. And there are a lot of predatory women that are going to try to use carnal hypergamy on your son. But when you hear women like TJ Randolph that has taken a de-evolution in this loaded question, what do you tell your son also about how to protect himself against predatory women?
Well, the first thing you start with, well, first of all, let me say shout out to TJ Randall. She's an anomaly. She's actually a blessing in this space, because
yes, right.
I'll tell you what, there's not a lot of women that speak like her and that think like her. Because what happens is they usually form a group, unlike us, and they reinforce each other's delusions. So any woman that speaks like TJ Randall is going to be ostracized from that group, and she's going to be, called the names and the shaming tax, pick me, and all that other stuff that they thought women. But I'm sure she could care less. But in terms of with the boys, here's the thing about it with me, okay? And I hope you guys can hear me good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
One of the things that I started out with is I wanted to be there for my boys and teach them masculinity at an early age, because everything in this culture has to do with men. Especially if you have a conversation about intelligent, successful Black men, the conversation always changes to conversations about Pookie and Ray Ray. If you try to corner people and you take away all the negative aspects of these types of men, and you're saying we're talking about successful, intelligent, hardworking Black men, blue collar, white collar, whatever, they always don't want to, and you talk about that as requirements from women, it always turns to conversations about Pookie and Ray Ray. So I don't, whatever they are, the symbols of the whatever. But in terms of my boys, I started from an early age with them, being there in their life, and teaching them self-confidence, self-esteem, and valuing yourself, seeing yourself as a value, and only associating with women that are feminine, cooperative, submissive, that add value to your life, and that like you for you. And the first thing I try to explain to them is this. You look at it like this. If you're working a regular blue collar job, a regular job, making whatever, great men that work these jobs, and this woman would not have talked to you, would not have liked you as who you are, you can always tell. Now, all of a sudden, you're this famous person or you have money now. That same woman feels the same way about you. She just likes the resources, the status, or whatever. So we start from a point of value in yourself and not seeing yourself as this person that's always, trying to see women as a status of your success. Your success is your purpose. A woman is an addition to your life. So we started that from a young age, building masculinity, teaching self-confidence, teaching self-esteem, teaching how to value yourself. So there's an advantage in that, them having me all their life, because they're able to build that confidence. A lot of the kids you see get exploited are those people that don't have that accountability in their life from dad. I'm accountable. If I see my boys simping, I drop the hammer. If I catch them in some young lady's DMs or thirsting or whatever, and I find out, I drop the hammer on them. That's not masculine. So for me, the whole thing comes back. That's why I titled my channel Return of the Patriarchy. It comes down with men, strong men, masculine men, being leaders, not being apologists. Because from my title right alone, you can tell I don't care. I don't care what feminists think. I really don't give a rat's ass. I will tell women exactly what I think. I don't care. Right. And that translates into my boys. So my boys are not subservient. They're not part of woke culture. They don't speak on code. They understand that, and that energy comes from me. So the big issue we have here in our culture is the absence of masculinity and these apologists. And men are here being programmed to be sacrificial animals because that's the ideology. And even men like me who talk like me make them uncomfortable because I ain't scared. Yep. So, but that's really what it just fathers translating into boys. And you have to be that way.
Right. And I think it's very important that men transitioning into manhood with strong masculine fathers. We're going to sign off in a few minutes. This has been a very important conversation. I got to see clients and I got to get my stomach full before I, drop some fire. But, you have a background in law enforcement just like me, Mr. Ingram. Do you think more modern men are simps now compared to when you and I were guys growing up in high school? You're 6'7", I'm 6'5", 6'6" with shoes on. We both were athletes in high school. Yeah, we're tall, Terry. Me and Mr. Ingram are tall.
Yeah, yes, I think so. I think more men are simps, and I think more men are panderers because of the social programming. It's in
the social programming,
it's in the shows, it's in Hollywood culture, and it's almost like they've been beaten down. A lot of boys raised by single moms.
Right.
The single mom factor is crippling our community.
Right.
Like I always say the things like crime is a symptom of something. Crime is just a symptom. The real problem, you start with the household. And if you go through any of these communities or environments, you knock on the door. These areas, the household income is $30,000. There's women getting government assistance from, obviously we can talk about welfare and the government replacing men in the home. We can go back to the Great Society and Lyndon Billy Johnson. See, what happens is in our community, people don't want to talk about that crap. What they want to do is shame and blame. But we don't want to talk about how we've sold out our family. We've sold out our morals to the government and popular culture. We replace men with checks. And everybody wants to talk about, well, maybe it was jobs. And I look at the unemployment rate was better at that time for Black men and women. So it wasn't about unemployment or financial. It's just that when the government came in, men went out and the family went out. When government and feminism came into the Black community, everything else, the family, the fathers, everything hit the back door. And that's really what happened. That's the truth. And people want to talk about all these other causations. No, we sold our families out for the government. All these other racism has been here. Our families were what in the 1960s and 50s during the heat of segregation and racism. Why are we having 80 percentile with marriages and family, fathers in the home? And now we have more freedom than ever before. And now the situation is we're in the 23 to 27 percentile with fathers leaving household. That doesn't make any sense unless people sold out to the government. But that's a dialogue. But I think the elephant in the room is always with our community is that we need to deal with men and boys. You cannot fix a community without men and boys in their proper place and male development. I don't know how that's going to happen, Christian.
Well, as I said to TJ earlier, it's going to take a total de-evolution. I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetime, unfortunately, but he that has an ear, let him hear what the kosher clinician is saying. That's what the Apostle Paul says. So let he that have an ear hear what I'm saying, because I want to see these men inspired. I want the intentional millionaire to be the best version of himself. I want the young gentleman, Cam, to be the best version of himself so that he doesn't not have to be a victim of being on the verge of snapping. The intentional millionaire, we're going to sign off in a minute, and this has been a powerful show. I think you answered the question earlier, but has there been a time where you almost snapped? And maybe you've already answered it, but if you haven't, tell the audience a time where you've been tempted to snap because you got played by a woman.
Almost snap. Well, that's kind of hard for me, really. Because when I had that experience so young, I just never got to that point, and whenever it got rough, I just decided to leave. I just, if it ever got to that point where it got to where I don't trust, I feel like game is being played, then I'm just leaving. And I make that clear. Right. So I can say, I think that emotional blow at that time was really my eye opener to be conscious of what was going on around me, because I really did love the young lady, but it showed me that it wasn't just about love, because she still wasn't willing to work with me when I had one more year getting an engineering degree.
Right.
And I just could not, it took like a year and a half for me to really get that together in my head. So from there, though, I realized that it was just about love. So I guess for me, probably during the time I was healing and learning about myself, it allowed me to be more conscious. And then, I had an older brother that was going through a lot of different things with just having a bunch of kids, things like that. So, and I was the type where my dad did always say, you can learn what to do and what not to do from everybody. So, and I looked at my older brother as I learned so much of what not to do.
Right.
And that's why I was able to go to age 42, no kids, was because he got 5 girls and 4 baby mamas. So, and say, if I can say any more to that, it was a nightmare. So, so I was able to learn, but me and him was the closest, and I would kind of consult with him. He would kind of share stuff with me. And then eventually I got back in contact with my dad. He had moved in another city, but I got back in contact with him, and I act like that never happened, because it wasn't for me to judge him. I was just glad to see him. It was for him and his, God to figure that part out.
Right.
But, so for me, I think that's kind of I think I'm a one-off to that question.
Right. Right.
I didn't have a good quick story though.
Real fast, less than 2 minutes. I have to leave. I got to get ready to go to the office to see clients. But before you say that, Cameron, Shout out to my man Tim Howard for the $5 super chat. Thank you, God. And then Tim, after you give at least within 2 minutes, then TJ, I want you to tell the audience what you got from this discussion. I got to get ready and see clients, man. I got to go to the office. So, this conversation has been so good, I didn't realize it's been over 2 hours. But TJ, we got to do it again. But real quick, in less than 2 minutes. Go ahead, brother.
So basically, I was at my house and I was seeing a young female at the time, and I had an old phone that was in my drawer. I went downstairs to have a shower. By the time I got back up, I noticed my drawer was open, and for some reason, I went to my old phone, and she erased everything from my old phone. So all my contacts, every text message, and so on and so forth. And then I said, "Why did you do it?" And she said, you had text messages in there from 2 years ago." Anyway, cut a long story short, I asked her to leave and she said no. But when she said no, I could picture in my head literally picking her up and dragging her downstairs, but I didn't do that. I just simply I turned off the light, turned off the TV, and we sat in silence for the next 20 minutes until she decided to get up and leave. So
Right.
What happens to anybody. That's what you do.
And that's a healthy coping mechanism, something called self-reflection. Real quick, TJ, before I leave, and thank you, Mr. Ingram from the Ingram Experience. Thank you, the Intentional Millionaire. Thank you, Cam, but also thank you, TJ, for popping in, giving input from a cerebral woman's perspective. Guys, thank you. I love you guys. But real quick, before we sign off, TJ, what did you get from this conversation, and what have you taken from it that you would give to other young women as it relates to not putting men in a predicament where they can become the rubber band man?
Well, there's not a whole bunch more I can say, but I'm just going to say this. Women, examine yourself. Examine yourself. And if you can identify with anything that I've said about my experience, you need to check yourself. You need to get some counseling, do a self-evaluation, some self-assessment, and change the behavior if you say and truly believe you want to be married. So that's why I share my story. If any of the stuff that I have said that I did, you can identify with, you need to stop it right now. That's all I got.
Bravo to the sapiosexual TJ Randolph. Well, anyway, guys, this has been a good conversation. As always, I love hearing from the Ingram Experience, my man Cam, and also my first time from the Intentional Millionaire. I look forward to you guys sharing this content. Let's start a movement, because mental health matters. We can talk about money. We can talk about all things, but we don't talk about the mind, which is the epigenesis to all pathologies. Then I'll say that we are putting ourselves or self-deluding ourselves about the importance of mental health. I'm about to sign off, guys. It's been a pleasure. And once again, thank you, TJ. We're going to do a show at some point. I think I'm going to bring Roger on, and also Shannon Rawls. And we're going to call that show called the Gen X Nexus. And we're going to talk about when things begin to change from the worst from Gen X. Roger's from Gen X. He's class of probably 92. I think Terry's class of 86, I think. Right, Terry?
85.
85. Well, I was close. You with Shalimar and Switch. And and I'm from the class of 90, where everything is everything. But anyway, we're about to sign off. And thank you for my man, Tim Howard. Tim Howard was like Batman. Every time he threw up the signal, Tim Howard always come through. Much love to that brother. He's an awesome guy. He's an awesome moderator. And I'm forever honored. So we're about to sign off. And as I said in the past, that power never conceded to anything without a struggle. It never have, and it never will. We're signing off.